the best of the rest of the news. According to a new poll by the independent polling company NSON Opinion Strategy, of 250,000 Americans sampled, 87% associated the word Republican with greed, racism, and violence. And when it comes to politics, these aren't the best things to be known for. But why do Americans have such negative views of the Republican Party? Maybe it has something to do with the fact that within the Republican Party, there's a gulf between establishment Republicans and the new kids on the block who are typically bringing their extremist conservative views to Capitol Hill. After all, if the GOP was a united party, why would two Republican senators have to give separate responses to President Obama's State of the Union speech? So, is the Republican Party in a state of civil war? Are Tea Party members of Congress waging a battle with establishment Republicans for the future of the party? Joining me now for more on this is Austin Petersen, Director of Production of Freedom Works and Editor of the Libertarian Republic. Austin, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
I'm curious your thoughts on this split within the Republican Party.
Right. Well, this started, you talked about the Tea Party earlier, back in 2007 when this really began, and you were talking about it being some sort of AstroTurf movement.
Well, the original Tea Party
what really happened in 2007 was that the anniversary of the Boston Tea Party, a bunch of revolutionary young people got together and they raised $6 million for Dr. Ron Paul's presidential campaign because they believed in something, Tom, because they believed in free markets and limited government, and they believe in individual responsibility, personal responsibility, and I believed in that, which is why I donated my time and money to that campaign. And I worked with Tea Partiers to do things like put Senator Rand Paul, people like Senator Rand Paul and Senator Marco Rubio in power, because we knew that there was going to be no way for us to stop the Obamacare agenda if we didn't put ourselves some real strong conservatives in the House. If you look at the House Republicans, if you look at who is really the true fiscal conservatives, you could probably count on both hands the amount of real, true conservative libertarians. But there's more. We used to have one, just Ron Paul. Now we have about 12. We're putting together a real coalition that could put an actual libertarian Republican in the White House. I believe that Rand Paul is right, that the country is ready for a libertarian Republican narrative.
Okay, so you're using the word conservative and libertarian in a virtually interchangeable fashion.
Almost.
William F. Buckley famously said that a conservative is a man who stands astride the arc of history with his hand out shouting, "Stop." Sir Edmund Burke talked about how the essence of conservatism, and that word was used back then. George Washington called himself a liberal. Edmund Burke called himself a conservative. But the essence of conservatism was slow incremental change over time, multi-generational change, whereas the essence of liberalism was the willingness to embrace new ideas, novel things in a way that you may not know the consequences of.
Right.
And it sounds to me like what you're describing libertarians want to do is a radical departure from the historic way that the United States has been run, at least economically.
Right.
And therefore, it's really liberal, not conservative.
Well, libertarianism, by technical definition, would be classical liberalism. People who consider themselves conservatives today really believe in a liberal economic philosophy. What you call a liberal today is more what it would be a social democratic. A social democrat would be something what you would think of as more of a Democrat or a socialist, someone on the left.
Yes.
But the philosophy of classical liberalism is rooted in conservatism. The problem with conservatism today is that it's been hijacked by the leftists who came into the party in the 1960s and declared themselves neoconservatives. And so what we have right now is a coalition of traditionalist conservatives, social conservatives, radical libertarians such as myself, and of neoconservatives who came in the 1960s and 70s because they weren't able to get the warmongering passed that they wanted to get done. They were not able to make their gains in the Democratic Party, so they thought that if they switched to the Republican Party, called themselves neoconservatives, the public would buy it.
Yeah, I got it. So what are you guys going to do about it?
Well, what we're doing is we're putting together a coalition right now. It's the continuation of Ron Paul's revolution that began in 2007. This is Revolution 3.0. Me and my fellow revolutionaries are putting together a campaign that we think is going to put a real libertarian Republican in the White House in 2016. I'm more excited than I ever have been because I knew that if Mitt Romney were to lose that election, then it would galvanize the Republican base, create a civil war such as the one that we have right now.
Jim DeMint now arguably has more power than he did when he was in the Senate as the head of the Heritage Foundation. And the Heritage Foundation has traditionally kind of split from the Koch brothers, the libertarian branch, the Freedom Works, you're part of, right. and the Cato Institute, used to be the Charles Koch Foundation, has split from the libertarians in that they've historically backed kind of old line, Barry Goldwater type conservatives. Is Are we seeing a battle of think tanks here
Yes.
as well as of politicians?
Yes, absolutely. So you might be missing it if you're not really paying close attention, because there has been a battle for the heart and soul of these institutions going on here in
Of the
Washington,
Republican
D.C.
Party, basically.
Not necessarily, because a lot of these institutions are
Oh,
independent.
you're talking about the lawsuit at the Cato Institute.
That is a good example of what's happened. Of course, we lost our Speaker Dick Armey. There was a bit of what they called a coup, and we did lose
Freedom
Speaker
Wars.
Armey, right?
Yep.
And we now have the head of our establishment is a real, what you would call a Ron Paul libertarian type. Ron Paul libertarians took over Freedom Works, and here we are today. We now have institutions like the Heritage Institute who are hiring libertarians every day. We've got libertarians on staff all over the place. We've got
So
libertarians.
you're infiltrating the city.
That's right. That's what you've got to do. It's just like the Democrats did with the Republican Party in the 60s and 70s. They would call themselves neoconservatives. Libertarians will be whatever we
What
need
do you
to be.
say to the Republicans, big R Republicans, who say that what you guys are doing is you're turning the Republican Party into the Democratic Party under George McGovern, when George McGovern basically embraced the hippies and the peaceniks?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of great things that came out of George McGovern. He was a very strong civil libertarian, so I don't totally reject the legacy of George McGovern. Yeah. I'm not.
He lost the election.
Right, but I really don't care. I care more about principles. Parties are tools. I don't care anything about parties before a country. I put my country before any party. So what's really important, I think, is that we get our economy back on track by cutting our deficit. We need to cut spending, and we need to cut taxation, because the only way that we're going to grow and help the poor people that we care about and restore civil liberties. Remember, Rand Paul is the only Senate Tea Partier that has stood up for civil liberties against the drones that you talk about. He's the only one that said that. No Marco Rubio, no Chris Christie.
I got it.
None of them.
I got it.
Only the libertarians.
We got to go. Thanks a lot, Austin.
Thank you very much, Tom.
We'll be back.